Welcome to this episode of the People Dividend. I'm your host, Mike Horne, and I'm beyond thrilled to have Traci Austin in the audience today. We spent an inordinate amount of time connecting and arranging this interview that you don't need to know all the story about, but it's really my delight to welcome Traci Austin to all of our HR listeners in the audience, the business leaders, any of my students who are listening from Golden Gate University, because here we have an MPA, an SPHR, a SHRM, SCP, an ACC. So lots of credentials here related to people and culture, to coaching, to executive development, to the management of human resources in organizations. And uh, having spent a good bulk of my career in executive and organization development and people and culture, it's always nice to be with a kindred spirit who's also read the People Dividend, or at least some of the People Dividend, and I'm so happy about that. So Traci Austin brings, so let me tell you more about Traci. She brings over 20 years of experience in HR leadership and workforce development. She is the founder and chief talent officer of Elevated Talent Consulting, which you'll find in the show notes, and you'll be able to visit her at elevatedtalentconsulting.com. Traci Austin is the go-to expert in HR and leadership for the trades. So, maybe some differences for those who are in our audience. A lot of people in biopharma and biotech and technology here. So really great to talk about this in terms of the trades. Traci is also a dynamic speaker, a sought after advisor. She brings these high dynamic, high impact leadership insights to all of us. And she's the host of the People Strategy podcast. So somewhat similar. I'm so delighted you're here, Traci. Say some words about yourself to our studio audience, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I love, getting into what drives someone. Like I always end my podcasts with two questions. One is, what is a professional bucket list? And then what's a personal bucket list? Like, because guess what? We are all the same pot of soup no matter where we show up, and figuring out what makes people tick and aligns to what they love to do at work is so much fun.
That is fun. So how did you end up doing what you're doing? I mean, you turned this insider HR work to something else. Just say something
Yeah.
about that,
Yeah.
please.
So, how I turned it into what I'm doing now is, quite honestly, I got bored with a butt in seat HR. I
Yeah.
mean, that's really what it was. I
Oh
was
my
going,
gosh, I
okay,
worked with somebody in HR who died at their desk at one company. So I do know, and
exactly.
that's not funny,
No, it's not. And it's like, okay, like, how can I bring what I love and this passion for people being fulfilled in their work to have a greater impact? And that was really kind of the transition. And again, I work with small organizations, 100 people or less, lots of mom and pops, 10 and 20 people, especially in the trades. And it's so fun when you're talking with a business owner that finally has the light bulb go off and go, I don't have to do it all and I can lead differently. Especially in the trades when we have this like pull up your bootstraps and like, this hardcore. And it's like, do we really respond well to, you must go do this? I'm going to yell at you. No. So,
actually, it's not difficult to imagine that same scenario in biopharma and biotechnology. I think about startup companies, small startups where you bang on the door in a big building, maybe in Emeryville, California, or somewhere else in the Bay Area or in Boston, and you find 12 or 13 people, trying to figure out something relative to science. And often when they first make their reach into human resources, it's often with, some a hired gun, some temporary assistance, because these are organizations of 10 to 12 people.
right.
They're very
Yeah.
small, and I think in some ways there's probably some similarities. I mean, the crafts are different, the trades are different, but there
Right.
is this, most business in the United States is small business.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. And what is really fun is the human element, and so one of the and I don't know how it resonated or whatever happened with it, but I I was keynoting a talk and I was talking with the promoter, and it was for a show called iLandscape. So it's all landscape, right? And he's like, Tracy, what's so interesting about you is you can get in the truck with me and go out to the job site, but I know in the afternoon you can go step into the boardroom with me. And he goes, and the reason for that is you listen to the complaints people have and start to ask questions to figure out what the request is and then how we can go about solving it. So for your listeners, if you think about this, as HR, sometimes I feel like we're like the chief complaint department.
Hmm.
I don't know if you ever felt that way, but there's times. So, at all levels, like we're just going to take all the things and hand it on
For
HR's
sure.
desk
For
because
sure.
they can handle it, right? Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
why not? So, but for me, I had to come up with a trick because it got to be too heavy. And that was, I wonder what is behind every single complaint that's here. And it's actually a request. So whether it was, John didn't do what he was supposed to do and I've got to stay till 8:00 tonight. I'm like, well, staying till 8:00 is a choice. A, let's see it as a choice, right? And B, what is really the request? Is it a workload request? Is it we don't know how to do something request? Is it a technology request? So when we can reframe these complaints into requests, now we start to become problem solvers and connectors in the organization.
Oh, it's so great. I mean, there are so many interesting weaves in this story for everyone in human resources and executive development who's thinking about pathways and what took you to where you are today and how you bring that, how you bring more of who you are to what you do. And Tracy, in your story, what, the reflections I saw in myself is, a long time ago, I was involved in the grape and lettuce boycotts with Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta. I mean, way back when. And then that led me to a couple of different things, Peace Corps volunteer. But anyway, my first probably real job was at the National Labor Relations Board. And that eventually migrated into jobs in the private sector and labor relations. But it was out of that, I was always like resolving conflict, trying to make a chord out of something. And I said, I am not going to have a career doing this all the time. And yet, the higher you go in human resources, and when I was a human resources executive, you're just dealing with employee relations of a different flavor in some ways. But it's the way of thinking about, what motivates us. Is it a goal orientation? Is it about figuring out if there's conflict over, I think as you stated, over facts or goals or vision? Or, what do we do with that? And I think that's what happens in human resources. As I reflect on my career in human resources and trying to focus this to our audience, I think many of the issues are the same relative to people and culture. These are issues of scale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I think there's an issue of scale, and then there's also an issue of what is the problem we're actually trying to resolve.
Right.
So often the problem we think we're solving is not the problem that needs to be solved.
So right, Tracy. And I often think of myself, for better or worse, and I'm always, in some ways, grappling with this issue about whether I am an engineer because I have a problem-solving orientation. If a client's paying me a lot of money to work on an organization development, let's work on a redesign of an R&D department in a, substantive organization. I'm going to bring expertise to that situation, but it's also helping that, person, helping that client to figure out their goals, and that's so important. And often there's conflict embedded in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So how do you do that in the startups that you work with, and maybe not startups, but established businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of start backwards, so to say, is I really start with what are the business results you're trying to get. So often I'm working with a C-suite to begin with, and we back into HR. So, what is the business results you're trying to get? And they tell me all the results they're trying to get and how they haven't hit half of them, right? I go,
Right.
okay, so what's the business strategy we're actually starting with? What is your strategy you're going after in order to get this result? So once I can see the two bookends, Now I go, okay, so what's your people strategy to get from here to there? And they kind of look at me like I've got six heads and they're like, what are you talking about? Okay. So then it's defining what a people strategy is. And I'm going to define it in 3 pillars: hire, train, retain. I like to make things simple, because my brain can handle the simple and they can handle the simple, right? So we break it
We
in.
used to always say recruit, retain, reward.
Yeah, same thing, right?
Same thing, right?
The same exact thing. So once we can break that down, because most folks I work with get strategy, but they don't have any idea about strategy. That
Mm-hmm,
makes
mm-hmm,
sense.
mm-hmm.
Like they get it. I'm like, all right, let's put this in so we have deliverables. If any of your clients use, entrepreneurial operating system or traction or that model with rocks, that's a lot of what we're using, right? And the key here is accountability. If we don't have who, how much, by when built in, we will fail, right? So it's really creating a strategy for people around the business strategy in order to get to the business results. And then challenging and saying, is that actually realistic?
And Tracy, what do you see as the levers of engagement in the trades? I'm just curious to have a conversation on that. Engagement's at an all-time low in the United States, employee
Right.
engagement.
Right. So what we see in the trades is people want to be seen, right? So for folks that are out in the field, do they understand the impact of what they are doing? And do they also have somebody that sees them bigger than they see themselves? Here's what I mean by that. We're bringing somebody in, may or may not have a high school education. They're doing, physical labor, and that's what they want to do, and that's what they're good at. We do not want to complicate what their job is. We want to simplify it so they can go do the thing that they do really, really well. But also, where do they want to go? Most folks that are in the trades have an idea in their head that there's a physical limitation that they will hit at some point in time, right?
And some people very early. I mean, if you're
Yeah,
doing some very physically demanding labor
right.
through your 20s, it can take a toll very quickly.
Exactly. So it's looking and really getting to know folks. What do you want? What's most important? And understanding the culture of where folks are coming from. If we're working with folks from, different backgrounds, they are going to have different things that are important, whether it is family, whether it is the community that they are a part of. And understanding what that is becomes really important, especially as you're building your teams. I am not a Spanish speaker. I am not bilingual, but let me tell you the importance of having those leaders that are bilingual if most of your team is Spanish speaking, right? And or whatever that is, that becomes really important, and that's a key diversity piece as well. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that, because that's a huge part of culture, and it's a huge part of understanding how we are bringing folks forward. And so it's connecting on what's important to them, what drives them, right? Like, what are those drivers for those individuals? And hey, for some, it's going to be they want to step back at the end of the day and look and say, I did that and I can be proud of it. For
When I
some,
speak, oh, I'm sorry.
oh, go ahead.
Now, when I speak with my colleagues in the trades who have trade businesses, they deal often with retention.
Yep.
It's easy for somebody who's an electrician that they're paying, I'm just going to make up numbers, $21 an hour to do something. And maybe they can make more in a fast food restaurant, a dollar more or 75
Mm-hmm.
cents more. And, maybe that means everything to that person. But there's a difference between having a job and having a career
Correct.
uh, in a trade. Now, that's also common in startup scientific labs where you'll find that, maybe a staff scientist will just as soon go down the hallway for another dollar.
Mhm.
So particularly in the trades though, I mean, as you're developing many young men, and I'm going to estimate it's mostly men in the trades still, despite the advances we need to make workplaces welcoming for everyone. But how do you do that? I mean, how do you really, latch into this retention issue?
Yeah. So I look at this as, I'm going to make a very scientific curve out of my hands. Are we ready?
Good for
All
our
right.
YouTube watchers. Yes.
Yes. So we've got the have to curve and we have the want to curve. The
Hmm.
have to curve only cares about the dollar. And guess what? We are going to have certain parts of our population that only care about the dollar at this point in time. We know that. We know that there's times we're going to hire folks in. Sometimes we still do warm body hiring. I'm not a fan. There's times we need to do it. I got it, right? However, the key here is what you want to do is look at what is the want to curve. Why does someone want to be at work? This is where the culture conversation becomes really important. This is where the talent pathway plan conversation becomes really important. This is where that question of what's a work bucket list and a personal bucket list question becomes really important, where we are building a relationship with the individuals. Because let's face it, when we start to look for work outside of where we currently are at, it is because we are not happy. And it's typically not because of the pay. It is because of all of these other reasons. And we're going to say all day long it's the pay because it's the easiest thing and we don't have to be honest, right?
Yes. And Tracy Austin, HR expert, what kills a culture?
What kills a culture is not having great relationships, not having trust with your team or with your leader, lying, looking out for things that are not in the best interest of your people. That was a quick rant, wasn't it, Mike?
Well, I don't think of it about as a rant. I think it's all,
A soapbox.
sometimes truth comes
There's a quick
quickly.
soapbox.
Yeah. And it's so important to think about all of this in terms of care, because I think one of the things that you can do in a small business, I mean, anytime you're more than two people, it becomes difficult to count. I think, even beyond one in HR, because there's somebody fractional or somebody, however you want to begin to think about their employment status and your relationship to them as an employee. Certainly, diversity has been under attack in 2025. I mean, even from the side of human resources management with, um, I'm sorry, ATD with the decision to no, it was SHRM with the decision to drop equity from its language. And how do we, what are we dealing with in trades in this regard?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what's really important about diversity is there's two ways we can look at it. We can look at it and say, what is it that we need for us to ensure that we are bringing the curiosity, that we are bringing the differentiation of thoughts and behaviors forward that best serves our clients, right? That's one really important way of looking at it, because I think that there's ways as this comes under attack that we can look at this and say, okay, then we're just going to make it into a business reason, which it should have been a business reason all along, in my opinion. What is the business reason? We know study after study shows us that the more diverse our workforce is, the higher results that we're going to get within that. So when we look at that, it is an and both of, yeah, do I want to hire the most qualified person? Of course I do. However, where do I also need to go to find that most qualified person? If I only go to, the tech school that has 100% Caucasian, I'm not going to diversify my workforce. So where do I go that I can pull these folks in? Where are the high schools in my area that I can start having conversations with that I know are not not all one way, that have the diversity in it. So some of it goes directly to our recruitment and goes into some of our best referral sources are our own employees. There's times where we have to look at that and say, okay, how do we do an and both?
Right. And I think, particularly working with folks who run small HVAC businesses, other landscaping businesses, many of them earn their work through their role and their hard work and their diligence. I think about a friend of mine who began a window washing company, and he didn't really set out to learn more about HR or learn more about. And in fact, I would say that most people, when asked, they don't remember who their HR person is. They remember who their boss is, but they don't often remember their HR person. Thinking about these business owners who aren't mastering leadership or HR strategies, who didn't get maybe a lot of training, how do we help them persist? How do we help them continue to build and grow their businesses successfully?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, the best HR is invisible. I mean, it really is. It's like that best HR person is invisible to the outside because they're working through their leaders. And I think that that's a really important point to note. So, you know, we actually created a team retention program for owners and leaders in organizations that brings forward a lot of these HR items, but puts it into day-to-day ways leaders can start to share that. For example, how do I have one-on-one conversations with my team around what they want to do within their career growth and what's important to them? How do I start to share with them what my vision is for them at this organization and what that growth plan is, both what I need to see from them in season in the field and then the expectation out of season when there's some additional time. You know, things as simple as how do we have accountability conversations so we're not allowing poor behavior and poor performance to happen over and over again, and it actually lowers our bar and our reputation. So it's those kind of items that are HRE, yet it is really the leader of that department or division that has to be having those conversations because they hold the
Well,
relationship.
it really is all about leadership. I mean, at the end of the day, isn't it about working on your business, not necessarily in your business with these topics, as Steve Covey identified quite some time ago. And Tracy, if you were to, if you were to leave our audience with a way of getting in touch with you or a way of thinking about, what's next in HR, what would those two things be? I mean, getting in touch with you, talking about what's next in HR.
Yeah, for sure. So getting in touch with me, LinkedIn is probably the best way to do that. Traci Austin on LinkedIn. We have, a newsletter for the trades that has some of these items in it that comes out weekly, and then really looking at something to think about is how can I build the strongest relationship with each member of my team? Because guess what? When we have trust with our leader, we typically don't go to the National Labor Relations Board and file a complaint. You know what I mean? We typically don't call an attorney and file a complaint when we have a great relationship because we're willing to have the conversation.
Yeah, that's so right. I mean, trust is one of those issues that always requires some nurturing and some development. In my first book, Integrity by Design, Working and Living Authentically, I talk a lot about trust and what happens when it diminishes, how is it recovered, how is it gained, and that is a great way to end today's episode of the People Dividend. Today with Traci Austin, a remarkable HR leader and expert. I'm so excited about all the work that she's doing and encourage you to be in touch with her for working through people and culture issues in the trades or in other organizations, drawing on her expertise as an HR expert and leader. So once again, Traci, thank you so much. And until the next episode of the People Dividend podcast, stay well.